Hi everyone, this is Bruce at Fatt Worms. Got a little bit of news that's causing chaos in my worm and compost business. We're moving house. We've bought a new house that's about 100 miles away from here, well 150 kilometres away from here, and we're very rapidly trying to pack everything up and sell the house we're in. So I'm just going to go through what we've got sitting here and what we're planning to do with it as we get to the move. So this is where I turn all of the compostable material that I bring into the property into usable compost to go on gardens with the aid of lots and lots of worms. And we'll show what stage they're at and we'll see what's going to happen to each of them. This is about 240 litres big. It's only just been filled up, so there's lots and lots and lots of raw compostable material in here, and I sprinkled a few worms into them a week and a half ago out of one of my worm trays. And this has got a lot of time left before it is in any way usable. Lots and lots of undigested nitrogenous stuff, and heaps and heaps of bedding, and it needs to be turned over completely at least 2 more times before it can settle down and lose its heat, and I'll add more carbon or more nitrogen based food as it needs, and more moisture as it needs. But what's good about it is the indicators here are good. The worms in here have all come up to maturity very quickly. You can see you can't really, if I put it back and it gets more comfortable, you'll see the clitellum is raised. There are worms of all ages through here. They're breeding like mad, and this will reduce in volume very, very quickly with the aid of the worms and the other microorganisms in this bin. But because it's only recently gone in here, it does need a lot of time, and I'm not carting half digested compost all the way up into the countryside. So somebody's put their hand up and said, we've got a community compost and gardening group, we'd love that, and we'll take it off your hands. So that's where it's going, just for fun. Let's say hello. Yes, you beautiful red worm. These are all red wigglers. Most of my worms are red wigglers. Also do have a growing colony of European night crawlers, which we'll see a bit later. So these containers, the compost bins, will be coming with us, but the contents will be going to a new happy home locally here somewhere in one of the suburbs of Adelaide in South Australia. It's the newest, the youngest. Alongside is the bin that has been full and was declared full several weeks ago now, and so it's been turned over a couple of times, and it's rapidly diminishing in volume, as you would expect. The microorganisms are getting in and turning much of the contents into something edible by bigger things like this beautiful big worm. And these also had a tray of worms from one of my bins dropped into them, various ages, a grow out bin, and they're also breeding like mad. This is very, very moist in here, so they're breeding up. They love the moisture for breeding up. And you can see, hopefully, yes, there's quite a few in here everywhere you look. I'm not going to look for, oh look at this beautiful thing. Everywhere you just rake over it and there's worms going through it like mad. Again, there's still quite a lot of undigested stuff in here. It's now got to the stage where there isn't a poopy smell in it. So the anaerobic rotting down has been cured. It's now a reasonable balance of carbon and nitrogen. Oh, look at these worms. And they're breeding like mad. And so this is now able to be left for a few weeks without any fear of it going nasty. Oh look, there's little ones here everywhere too. And this will be turned over hopefully about once a month. But again, the contents aren't coming with us. We'll be gone in all likelihood up to our new home before this is ready to be harvested. So this also is going to the community garden for their compost. The beautiful healthy red wigglers in here and all sorts of different sources of carbon. And if I look hard, I know I'll see lots and lots of cocoons, but I'm not going to look. You've only got to have a look and see that there are young worms in here, and you will know that this will be absolutely full of cocoons because these worms are coming from somewhere. So that's bin number 2. Bin number 1 has been rotting down for a long time, several months. There still are seeds sprouting in here. It's mostly very friable, starting to dry off, crumbly, apart from the more recently added carbon that I've chucked in to encourage it to continue to rot down all of those bits of nitrogen rich veggies and things. But I have started to harvest the compost and castings from this bin. Ideally this would be left another month and turned and moistened and then dried, just to make sure that it's well digested. However, that's not to be, so I am going to try to harvest all of this before we go, and the bin will be coming with us empty as well. So they're my big bins, and over here we've got a drying tub. This has some of the compost and worm castings from that last bin that we just looked at. It's drying out nicely, it's nice and friable. It still does have quite a bit of identifiable solid matter in amongst it all. Eggshells that weren't ground down finely, sticks and bits and pieces that came in with grass and garden stuff, but It's now sitting in layers and layers of cardboard, including bed cartons, and there aren't that many worms in here because it is drying up and they're all running down to the bottom where it's a little bit more moist. Let's see if we can find some down here. Yes, there's some down here. But I've been progressively taking material out of here, sifting it, taking the worms out. Yes, there's a lot of worms down the bottom. Let's see what's down here. Not, oh, you can just see. But there are worms down the bottom there. Lots, including lots of babies. This will be sifted and probably disposed of. I don't think I'll take all of this up to the new place. But there'll be gardeners or others who want worm castings. As this dries, they'll be able to get more and more from me. And there's a bit drizzly, so I'll just put this back. And I'll pause this and then we'll have a look in the breeder bins and the grow out bins. This is the Can of Worms worm farm where I put lots and lots of stuff, comes straight out of the kitchen, plus some bedding and a whole heap of worms, and I just fill up and let them do their thing and get heaps and heaps over time of worms and cocoons. And at the moment this needs a ton of bedding on top of a whole lot of stuff that was put in yesterday, and I just haven't got around to it, but we're going to have a look anyhow. I won't take you through what's in here. It's all nitrogenous. Virtually no carbon. The next layer down has more carbon but needs heaps and heaps more than that. And what we can see here is, regardless of the fact that the balance of carbon to nitrogen is way out of whack, there are thousands and thousands of worms at all ages, all sizes, from breeding to wormlets to wisps. And I use this primarily for two reasons. One is to get worm tea, or worm wee, or whatever you want to call it, which goes day by day into there and then into recycling plastic bottles, and then onto people's gardens. So one more layer, we'll have a quick look at that. I'll try not to get bitten by spiders, just hold on. Okay, the bottom layer is mostly digested. All of the worms in here, well, most of the worms in here I guess, are breeding, in breeding condition, and it's very moist. The moisture drips down from the top down through this bin, so it's probably too moist, but it doesn't matter. They don't mind in this part of the bin that they've got somewhere that's a bit slimy and slippery, because it just encourages them to get all jiggy and do the worm thing. Throughout this tray, there are thousands, literally thousands and thousands and thousands of cocoons, and and I just let these go their own merry way for quite a long time. They'll breed up, they'll fill this up with cocoons, they'll eat up everything in here, and when they're ready, and I don't put a tick on the calendar and say you're coming out on a certain date, but when they're ready, I'll take this and, oh look at this tiny little wormlet here. I'll take all of this, sift it, get the cocoons, get the worms out, move the second tray down to the bottom, balance up the material that's in there, the carbon and nitrogen balance, get the pH balance reasonable, and really the best indicators are that there are things growing in here, that the stuff in here is turning into worm poo, that the worms are happy, and that means they're happy reproducing, and there are lots and lots of worms, and that the material colour is looking more and more and more like worm poo every day, and that there's no smell, and in this there's just a slight damp smell. There's no pooey smell, there's no anaerobic action going on in here, and although it could be made ideal, this is plenty good enough, and this can produce enormous numbers of worms if you keep feeding at the top, harvesting at the bottom, moving the top two trays around one on top of the other, and then swap them over every now and then with the feeding trays, and then one day you'll have a look and think, gee, the bottom tray really does look pooey. I'll take that out, I'll dry it out, sift it, harvest it, and use that tray back on the top, and the next tray down will go down to the bottom, and start feeding it over and over again. And really they, despite all of the good worm wisdom, they don't care, and they'll eat anything and everything. They can be out of balance in their nitrogen carbon for ages. So long as they don't get too hot, and so long as they don't dry out, they'll go like mad, which these do. So now we'll go in the shed and have a look at breeders and grow outs. So in here we've got, amongst all of the junk, some castings are really dry now and friable. They're for someone who's ordered it to come and pick them up when they're ready. So every week or two I take these out, sift them, add a little bit more moisture, and the moisture that I'm adding to them is worm tea. So I have 4 10-litre buckets, and a half that's not yet promised to anybody, and this is being progressively added to as I harvest the worm castings from the other side of the yard. There's not much in the way, oh there's one, I was going to say there's not much in the way of cocoons coming through. The sieve that I use is a plastic sieve with 2mm square holes. It does still let some cocoons from red wigglers come through. Now this is what was dumped in here to become the next grow out. it has, or had, a heap of worms hanging on to cardboard from the dry out bin, and a whole lot of semi-moist, unsifted oh no, this is sifted, but it's got all of the ovies put back in. So this has got the cocoons and the ovies and some worms, and it's too dry, but as I say, this has just gone in here and it will become a grow out bin for, or a production bin, whatever you want to call it, for the cocoons and small worms that I've harvested from here. And for whatever reason, I can't remember why, I tipped in a heap of ovies as well. Maybe I was seeing a lot of worms going through in the ovies in the sifting. So that's the castings that I've currently got. 4 litres, 4 by 10 litres ordered, next 10 litre being filled, and lots of junk. And grow out bins, let's have a look at the grow out. So that's the first one, and hey presto by magic, this is the second of the grow out bins. It's quite moist, so there's all sorts of critters living in here with the small number of worms. Oh look, a small number, and they're actually even at breeder age. But mostly this is a heap of wormlets and cocoons that are hatching, and hence wisps. And just enough adult worms to send chemical messages that this is an environment that the cocoons can hatch their little wisps out into, and that they should survive. And so we can see here, so it's not absolutely overflowing with cocoons, but there's plenty in there if you care to look. And let's see what's happening with these. Any of these hatching as we look? Probably not. But give a few weeks and this will be teeming with worms, and these will go either back into my process as I re-establish it up in a new place, or they'll go for sale. And it looks like they've still got enough small, tiny pieces of edible material through this. This was set up with all sorts of yummies to entice them to come out. It will get a good big feed of good worm food shortly. So that's the main grow out bin. That's number 2 grow out bin. And while we're here, the other thing worth looking at is the breeder bins, and these are tiny. These are 30 centimetres by 40 centimetres by, I don't know, 5 centimetres deep. So they're really tiny. And they should have worms, apart from mould, they should have worms in here breeding. And they should be making lots of cocoons, and sure enough there are plenty of worms in here. They've been at it in here for a few weeks now. Let's see what stage she's at. He, she, it is at. Yes, so the crotellum is nice and ripe, but it's not swollen, and this worm doesn't appear to be interested yet in finding a mate and breeding. Be nice if we can actually find somebody here who's going to show it how it's done, but it doesn't look like it. But they're all about this stage. They're at reproducing age, and in the next 4 to 6 weeks, this and the other bins in this group will become full of cocoons if I keep it nice and moist, keep the worms nice and happy, and we'll go around again. So already we're finding there's new cocoons in here. Where are these lovely worms? I thought we might see them doing the worm thing. Here, look, these are probably just disturbed. These are inbreeding fettle, I guess you'd call it. The clitellum is swollen. They've got lots of moisture in here. They will get together and cuddle up and exchange breeding material, and they will each, after mating, produce their own cocoons. Now, if I stop wiggling around like a worm, I'm pretty sure you'll see cocoons in here. These do have another couple of weeks to go before I'll be ready to sift them all out, but they do look like they're ready for another feed, so that's a job for this afternoon. The last of the breeder bins here. Nice, we'll have a look in them all. It's a very small operation here. Beautiful big fat worm. So that's all of the red wigglers. We won't have a look today in the European night crawlers. I don't want to inadvertently go around the front now and put a cocoon in from the red wigglers into the European night crawlers, because then before I know it there'll be a mixture that's getting up towards 50-50, and then not long after that there'll be a mixture that is 80% red wigglers and 20% European night crawlers, and I'll be trying like mad to start up the European night crawler colony again from scratch. But these are my beautiful babies. Look at these lovely worms. So if you've got this far, thank you very much for watching. That's what I've got. Oh, these, by the way, these are all coming up to the new place with us just as they are. Thanks for watching, and when we get to the new place in a few weeks, or possibly before if we don't sell up here quickly, I'll show you, starting with the European night crawlers, and see how these have all progressed. Bye for now. Oh, don't forget to subscribe if you're not already subscribed, if you found this somehow by accident, and if you didn't mind coming for a little tour of my tiny little worm business, I'd love it if you'd press a like to this video. Thank you.